still on the deal flow in the African market, right? I did two videos on this subject so far. The first one, I talked a little bit about the challenges on sourcing deals and what can be done to address that. And then in the second video, I started talking briefly about uh, conducting due diligence, right? And I stressed especially, right, the need for being involved in the due diligence process and not letting the process being driven by your external counsel or accountants or other advisors, right? And now in this video, what I'm gonna talk about a little bit is about the financing side. We all know that a key part of increasing and maximizing investor returns in M&A transaction is using leverage, right? So for the typical buyout transaction in the private equity space, it's gonna be some equity, maybe 20 to 40%, and the rest is gonna be some version of earnouts plus leverage, right? Meaning debt. So in the African market, because of the nature of many capital markets and financial markets in different countries, it's relatively challenging to leverage debt, to use that on your first acquisition. And here's why. Oftentimes, I'll give you the example of Angola, right? Because of relatively high inflation rates in many countries in the continent, borrowing money can become incredibly expensive, right? And if you are borrowing money, let's say at 17% interest rate, like unless the business is highly profitable, right, generating an incredibly amount of cash flow, you're gonna have a hard time to support the debt service, right? So what I'm getting into is when you're considering to enter the African market and finance the deal, right, you really have to account for a significantly large portion of equity play into the deal structure and not to rely necessarily in debt financing, unless here's a caveat to that, unless you can find uh, financing outside of the continent or structure the deal with some form of royalty piece attached to it, earnouts attached to it, then you could reduce the amount of equity you have to bring into the deal. So that's one of the things that can be done. Now, I also understand that, right, the first deal, it's really hard to finance through uh, that equity mix. But also, if you plan to do a roll up strategy, which is really excellent in the African market because there are too many fragmented industries and too many small players, bring them together, you can create synergy, cost saving initiatives, of course, right? They also present a really good opportunity for debt financing because once you run or purchase the first business or you make the first acquisition and you're growing that business is generating very good cash flow, then you can go to local banks, you have relationships, and you can who knows, get favorable terms and maybe lower the cost of debt in that way. So these are more likely what could work in the African context. But again, I would love to hear your experience if you're investing and buying businesses in the African continent and share notes. All right. So I'll see you in the next video, and hasta la vista.